I didn't lose her in a breakup. I lost her at my father's wedding, and the worst part is she smiled at me and called me family. It still doesn't feel real when I think about it, because this wasn't supposed to happen, not in my life, not with the two people I trusted the most. Her name was Emily, and we met during my second year in college. She was the kind of girl who didn't try too hard to stand out, but somehow she always did. I remember the first time I saw her sitting in the library, completely lost in a book, calm and focused like the world around her didn't exist. I sat across from her without saying a word, but somehow we ended up talking, and from that moment, everything just felt natural. There were no games, no confusion, just two people slowly becoming part of each other's lives. Within a few weeks, we started dating, and for the first time, I felt like someone truly understood me, not just what I showed on the outside, but who I actually was. After a few months, I introduced her to my dad. My mom had passed away years ago, so it was just the two of us, and he had always been a bit distant, not cold, just not very expressive. But that night was different. He smiled more, talked more, and seemed genuinely interested, especially in her. At first, I thought he was just happy to see me with someone, but now when I look back, I realized there was something else in the way he looked at her, something I ignored because I never imagined things could go that far. Over time, Emily started coming over more often, sometimes even when I wasn't home. My dad would casually mention it like it was nothing, saying she stopped by or needed help with something, and I never questioned it because I trusted both of them completely. Then slowly, things started to change. Emily became distant. She still talked to me, still smiled, but something felt missing, like she was there physically but emotionally somewhere else. I asked her a few times if everything was okay, and every time she said yes, and every time I believed her. The breakup came out of nowhere, or at least that's how it felt. We were sitting in my car outside her place when she quietly said she thought we should end things. No real explanation, no clear reason, just a sudden distance I couldn't understand. I asked her if there was someone else, and she looked me straight in the eyes and said no, and I believed her, because at that point I had no reason not to. After that, she disappeared from my life almost completely. The calls stopped, the messages faded, and eventually there was just silence. My dad never mentioned her again either, which at the time felt normal, but now I know it wasn't. Months passed, and I tried to move on, keeping myself busy, pretending I was okay, even though deep down it always felt like something was unfinished. Then one evening my dad told me he had started seeing someone. It caught me off guard, but I tried to be supportive. He said it was serious, and for some reason that made me feel uneasy, like something wasn't right, even though I couldn't explain why. A few weeks later, he invited me to dinner to meet her. I agreed without thinking much about it, because why wouldn't I? It was just dinner, just another normal moment in life, or at least that's what I thought. But the moment I walked into that restaurant, everything changed. I saw her sitting at the table, smiling, waiting, and for a second my brain refused to accept what I was seeing. It was Emily, my ex, sitting there like she belonged, like nothing had ever happened. My dad stood up and greeted me like everything was normal, like this wasn't the most insane situation imaginable. And then he said something that made it even worse. He said, "You remember Emily?" I felt numb in that moment, like my body was there, but my mind had completely shut down. She stood up, looked at me, and said hi like we were strangers, like we hadn't shared memories, feelings, or a life together. Dinner felt like torture. They talked, laughed, and acted like a couple right in front of me, while I sat there trying to process how my life had turned into something so messed up. After dinner, I pulled my dad aside and asked him what was going on. He looked at me calmly and said it wasn't what I thought, and I almost laughed because there was no version of this that made sense. He said they started talking after we broke up, but the way he said it, the way she stayed silent, told me everything I needed to know. This didn't start after the breakup, it started before. I left that night without saying anything else because there were no words that could fix what had already been broken. A month later, he told me they were getting married. Just like that. No hesitation, no guilt, no attempt to explain or apologize. I didn't go to the wedding, I couldn't, but I saw the pictures online like everyone else. There she was in a white dress, standing next to my dad, smiling like this was her happy ending. And in one of those pictures, she placed her hand on his chest the same way she used to do with me. And that's when something inside me finally broke, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Weeks later, I went back home to pick up some of my things. I hadn't been there since the wedding, and everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. Then I heard her voice behind me. I turned around and saw her standing there in my house, my home, like she belonged there now. She smiled awkwardly and said, "I guess this is weird," and I couldn't believe that was the word she chose for something like this. I looked at her, really looked at her, trying to find the girl I once loved, but she wasn't there anymore. Then she said something I will never forget. She told me I should try to accept this because we are family now. That word, family, felt like a cruel joke. But I didn't argue, I didn't shout, and I didn't ask any more questions, because in that moment I understood something clearly. Some betrayals are so deep that they don't need explanations, they just need distance. So I nodded, picked up my things, and walked out of the house without looking back. I haven't spoken to my dad since then, not because I hate him, but because I finally understood who he really was. He didn't just take my ex, he broke something much bigger than that. He broke trust, and once trust is destroyed like that, it doesn't come back.